Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast with Pastor James C. Johnson, a ministry of NorthStone Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida.
Pastor King, welcome back to the Strength for Life podcast.
Good afternoon.
We had originally scheduled to be done with the ministry series, but yet I heard that Pastor King was going to be in town. And
I'm in town,
here.
dropping two kids off at PCC.
Yeah.
My third time on the podcast.
I know. This is incredible. I think the only person on the podcast that has beat you as far as amount of times they've been on is Pastor Monty.
That is high company.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great company. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on, and it's unique for you to be on the series. All the pastors that I've gotten to sit down with are, pastors in the U.S., and Canada has a few of its own challenges, but similar in some ways. So I feel privileged to get to discuss some ministry things with you, and I'm excited about it.
Glad to do it.
Yeah. Pastor King, here's a question I asked everybody. What do you do in your spare time?
Well, there's two things I do primarily. I like to read, and so I read a wide variety of things, and I read quite a bit.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, I run.
Yeah.
Now, I enjoy reading. I do not enjoy running. And as we train for a marathon, it takes more and more commitment. There's those long runs that would take, a few hours.
Yeah.
And I'm actually hoping if I survive the marathon, next summer I want to do an ultra marathon.
No way.
And then just keep her going. So
Good for
that does take quite a bit of commitment. So I run begrudgingly because I don't enjoy it, and read, and I do enjoy it.
Yeah, in preparation for this, I listened back to the first time we had you on the podcast, and I don't know if it was back in March or something, but you had said that you were just getting into running because you had an injury or a surgery or something, and that kind of set you back, and then you're kind of starting it up again. And you said you ran 4 miles in 45 minutes or something, and that's kind of where you were at with recovery. And then just recently, you ran 20 miles.
Yeah, I've done a couple 20 milers.
That's incredible.
That's a bit of a haul.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And then ultra aspirations.
Ultra aspiration. So I have a cousin who's 50 years old, and she runs ultras. And I'm like, if she can do it, surely
Yeah.
I can do it.
That's motivation, I guess. Wow, that's interesting. But okay, so and you also you worked at Good News Ministries with my father for 3 years.
I did.
What was that like? What was young James Johnson like?
Young James Johnson.
Was he a bull in a china shop? Was he somebody that you had to rope in, or was he a mellow guy that?
So he wasn't. He was my superior. So,
really?
So he was the director. So it was Dan's job to rope him in, not my job. and he was full time, so he did a number of things around there at the mission. I was part time, so I was part of the after school program.
Yeah.
So I might have told the story before, but your dad grew up in the hood.
Yes.
I did not grow up in the hood. I grew up in small town Canada. And one of my defining moments was one of the twins got his bike stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, your dad is not afraid of confrontation. And so he says to me, grab your car. I had an old Buick LeSabre. We're going to go find this kid's bike. So we jump in, we're driving around, and we come up to this house, and there's these guys, and they're all in their young 20s, and they're on the porch. They're smoking weed, they're drinking things, and they already got the stickers peeled off the bike. And your dad says, leave the car running and pop the trunk. And he jumps out, and I'm thinking, this is going to be my last day on earth. These guys are going to start, shooting or something.
Yeah.
And your dad did some kind of his swift talk, gets the bike, throws it in the trunk, and we peel off.
Yeah.
And so...
that sounds very much like a James Johnson story.
That doesn't surprise you.
No, not at all. I think there was a time, I might be mistaken in my facts, and CNN can fact check me later, but there was a time, I think, growing up where the church basketball goal, we had like a standalone basketball goal outside, and I think somebody took it.
Okay.
And needless to say, we got it back.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, it got returned, and we got it back. So, yeah, I would pay a lot of money to get to go back and see, 22, 23-year-old James Johnson, just to hang out with him. I wonder if we'd be friends. I don't know. We probably would.
Well, I was friends with him, so I'm sure you would have been as well.
Yeah, no.
He was always a dreamer. He always had big plans.
Yeah.
He was always a hustler. I remember there was an old church, Garfield Street Baptist Church.
Okay.
And I remember one night he said, all right, hop on your bike. And we rode our bikes over there. And we sit on the steps and we prayed for God to give him Garfield Street Baptist Church, that he could have a revitalization right there in the middle of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Never happened, but he's always always had big ideas.
Yes, he is a goal-oriented kind of person.
Yeah.
And a lot of men are, but him specifically, like he sets his eyes on something and it's like something that he's going to go do.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah.
And so ministry is made up of different personalities.
Yeah.
Some are the big vision guys. Some are the detail guys, right?
Mhm.
And it's good to have a variety on staff, because if you only have the big idea guys, we don't know how to get things done. We just know what it has to look like,
Yeah.
right?
10-year plan.
Exactly.
Got that. But
Exactly.
not about it. Yeah, that makes sense. Something else you guys have in common is Monty's basement.
Monty's basement.
Both of you were, Monty children that were brought in, right?
So when I came down for Bible college,
Yeah.
that first year, after my first year, I did not want to go back. It wasn't going to be I wanted to stay where I was. And he opened up his basement to me. So he lived in the old farmhouse at that point, where the basement was unfinished, and there's an old cot shoved in the corner,
Yeah.
and things leaked and smelled, and all the rest happens in the old basement.
Yeah.
And I did that for 3 or 4 years, and he became, like your dad, a pretty significant father figure to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool to see, like, after the fact, to see you in ministry, my dad in ministry, and the successes that, Monty was able to, imprint in their lives is pretty cool.
I asked him the other day if he could think and list the different preacher boys that he's had an impact on, and where they're scattered throughout the U.S.
That'd be an interesting.
And yeah, he couldn't think of them all because there's been a few, but
Yeah.
there's probably 12
Wow.
that are in full-time ministry and that he's had a significant impact on one way or another.
That's
Either kids that grew up in his church
Mhm.
or that were brought in as extras.
Yeah, one of the cool things that about that story is I think of how Kelly sacrificed. Imagine being the wife of Pastor Monty and Monty just bringing in kids left and right.
There's all these kids just showing up, and she
Yeah.
has to feed and clean and look after.
Right. Kelly's the real MVP.
100%.
Yeah.
Because she has a gift of hospitality
Mhm.
and a behind-the-scenes servant heart.
She does. Totally. So something else I wanted to ask you. Last time you were on the podcast, we talked a lot about Canadian politics, and a good bit has transpired since the last time we sat down a few months ago. And so I wonder, now that we have a sample size of President Trump's tariffs on Canada, you had some somewhat negative things to say about Trump's rhetoric as regards to tariffs and some of those things. So as far as a U.S. standpoint, like they were claiming a recession would happen in the United States economy. It might come, but not as of yet. But so far in the United States, we've been okay with his tariffs. How has the tariffs affected Canada?
Well, we're still against it, and so there's double frustration. I still get frustrated over Mr. Trump's rhetoric,
Yeah.
and I get frustrated at our own government's inability to get a trade deal,
Mhm.
and so we don't have one still. And so just about everything has increased in price. We have some auto workers in our church, and of course, their jobs are in jeopardy,
Mhm.
and there's high stress for that. And so I don't do the shopping in our home. My wife does. And so I asked her in preparation, what has gone up? And she said, everything has gone up. So prices have definitely risen.
Yeah. I watched a video on YouTube the other day about how Canadians are trying to boycott U.S. products. Have you been a part of the boycott of U.S. products?
Never, because we buy whatever's cheapest.
Right.
We don't care where it's made.
Sure.
That's US or China, if it's cheaper. And we actually, because we live on the border community, we go to Buffalo once a week.
Yeah.
And do shopping on some things and get gas.
Uh-huh.
And my wife said, I'm not going to boycott, I'm going to get the sales.
Yeah.
So she's a sales shopper.
How long do you expect the Trump tariffs to stay in place? Do you think this will be a somewhat permanent thing, even if the tariffs go down? Or do you think they're going to get a deal done sometime in the future and wipe away the tariffs?
I don't have an answer for that. I would have thought there would have been a deal in place by now.
I would have too.
I'm surprised that there's not.
Right.
And so our prime minister seems very intent in cozying up to China.
Uh-huh.
That's why we call Canada China.
Yeah.
And there's a number of worrying things happening in that respect. I don't know.
As it regards to Trump's rhetoric, the election has happened in the time of, I think, since the last time you were on the podcast, but Pollier was the Republican or whatever,
The conservative.
guy for Canada. And he looked like he was going to do well. And then a lot of Trump's rhetoric happened. And then Pollier kind of got pushed aside by the Canadian people. And then Trudeau goes out. And who's the new guy?
His name is Mark Carney.
Mark Carney. Yeah, Mark Carney comes in. And how have you seen the effects of Mark Carney so far? Has there been any real effects of his?
Well, no, nothing has changed.
Yeah.
He's still a liberal.
Okay.
And that's not his ideology. Well, it is, but it's the party name is liberal. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe the Canadian version of your Democrats.
Sure.
So nothing has changed. It's just more of the same.
Yeah.
And it's just going to continue to go downhill. in every conceivable way.
Sure. Yeah. One way that something's gone downhill, even in America as well. I was listening this morning to a podcast, and he brought up this story, and it's happened in a lot of Western culture, not just in the United States and Canada, but a lot of places. And it is unfortunately that there's a lot of perversion of justice. And specifically, what I mean was 2 instances I heard of this morning were there was a guy who was awoken in the middle of the night in Colorado in the United States. And he was awoken to sounds of somebody, outside his house. And so he goes out there looking, and 2 kids are stealing his car in his driveway. And so like he makes these kids flee. He pursues after these kids, and he shoots one, kills one, and then he shot both of them, killed one. And then just recently, I was in 2023, and then just recently, this past week, he got sentenced to 52 years or something crazy in prison. Which is like insane to think about. That he got 52 years for protecting his house and his family, and not letting them steal his car. And then also in Canada, there was a 44-year-old guy who had his home broken into by some perpetrator, and then he defends himself and stabs the guy who broke into his house, and that guy just got charged with aggravated assault. And so I listened to Doug Ford, who I think it's in Ontario. Is that right?
He's our premier, which would be like the governor.
Okay, sure. So Doug Ford had a response to this situation, and this was his response.
Everyone hear about the story in Lindsay? So this criminal that's wanted by the police breaks into this guy's house. This guy gives him a beating, and this guy gets charged. And the other guy gets charged. But something is broken. I know if someone breaks into my house or someone else's, you're going to fight for your life. This guy has a weapon. You're going to use any force you possibly can to protect your family. I'm telling you, I know everyone would. I'd be scared to break into Kevon's house. Look at he's like a linebacker. He beat the living crap out of the guy, as he should. Because enough's enough here. Violence and breaking into people's homes, putting guns to their head. And guess what? Some bleeding heart judge, little Johnny, he didn't have a good upbringing. So we're going to let him out on bail 5 more times. Because he's on his 5th, being let out on bail 5 times, just to go do the same thing the next day. I'll tell you one thing, I get more calls than anyone in the country. People are done with this. They're absolutely done. They're finished.
So, like, Doug Ford is obviously onto something there with, this perversion of justice. Like, why is this taking place? What's your response to some of those recent events?
Well, we would echo his frustration.
Yeah.
And so this is not an isolated manner. And he's right, the justice system is broken. You have people that do violent crimes that are either catch and release or out on probation in 5 years for violent, heinous things. And I have several law enforcement in my church, and they say that 95% of their arrests are repeat offenders, and they get arrested and they're let out the next day. And he said if the public just doesn't know, if they knew, there'd be an uproar. And so we feel like our hands are tied, that everything is backwards, that you should have the right to defend home and property, and you don't. And we have everything from sex trafficking rings to organized break and entering to car insurance has skyrocketed because of the repeated carjackings everywhere. And these guys are just let out the next day, and it's extremely frustrating.
It's a scary world to live in when police officers or homeowners have to worry about, am I going to go to jail for protecting myself or, just defending my family? It's crazy. I was talking to an officer in our church named Peter Gallion, and I was doing a ride along with him in his car. And he said, what is the sentiment of Doug Ford is like, we've got to prosecute these people. Like he's saying we see the same people in the streets all the time that are keep committing crimes, and we just take them to jail. The judge says whatever, slap on the wrist, they're back out there next week. And so it's like something's got to change. And I think this is a larger thing than just these 2 incidents, obviously.
One of the chief police in Toronto, because of the carjacking, actually gave as a PSA to homeowners, keep your key fob near the door, because that's what they want, and let them steal your car and they won't hurt you. It's like that is not the way we're supposed to be doing things.
Oh, my word.
And we're not to make it easy for these criminals.
Yeah, that's such a joke.
And so very frustrating. My children want, US has its problems too. Yeah. But they all at this point want to move down to the States and live in US. Yeah. I can't say that I blame them, because again, of the fear that if I'm going to protect life and limb, that I could be prosecuted for it.
Right.
And so what's happening now in Canada, and one of our officers told me this, is that they just are arresting everyone and let the courts sort it out.
Huh.
And so this guy, he might get let off, but again, they're going to let the courts figure it out.
Yeah. And that's a scary thing
It's a
because
scary thing.
courts are pretty messed up right now.
Yes.
So we'll see. Okay, those are some current events and Canadian politics. I appreciate your thoughts on those things.
It make every night when I pray,
Uh-huh.
I pray for God's justice to be done. Right. As the great holy God of all, look forward to the day when he makes every crooked thing straight.
Amen. That'll preach. Okay, let's talk about some ministry questions here. And one of the questions that I've asked everybody, many of these questions are specific to you and your ministry, and things that I've seen in your preaching or just pastoral work. But this is one that I've asked everybody, is how did you feel the Lord call or impress on your life that you had to be a pastor? And how has he confirmed that call throughout your ministry?
So I have a slightly different story in that I never had a lightning bolt call to preach. What I did have is when I was 18, I was going to be a firefighter, and there was a guy in my church who asked me if I would ever consider going to Bible college. And I said, absolutely not. Only losers go to Bible college, not doing that.
That's right.
And he said, would you pray about it? And I said, no, we're not doing that either. And that summer that I graduated, I had signed up for forestry school and then firefighting academy, and I had a job lined up to fight forest fires. And that summer, the whole Pacific Northwest was on fire, and everyone on my crew got a call except for me. And I was at home washing dishes, which was my high school job, frustrated that my entire crew got a call. I see now that it was God's sovereign hand that kept me from going. And about a month into it, one night at work, I came under incredible conviction of the need to surrender. So I surrendered. And on my break, I called that guy at my church and I said, all right, I'll go to this goofy Bible college thing. I give up. And he recommended me to go down to Indiana Baptist College in Greenwood, Indiana, which is, at that point, as far as I knew, was the only Bible school in the entire universe. I hadn't heard of anything else.
That was it.
If you're going to go, you're going there.
IBC.
IBC. And so got out a map, figured where Indiana was, drove 3 days to get there. And then after the first year, so, well, let's surrender for a second year. Let's surrender for a third year. Let's surrender for a fourth year. And so each step has not been that call per se, but I'm going to surrender to what God would have me do in my life and follow his leading.
Yeah.
As far as confirmation goes, I don't have that call to look back to, but I do see God's very clear hand on my life in a number of ways.
Yeah.
That by God's grace, every church we've been a part of has grown and has done wonderful things in a very hard place to pastor. I've seen God in his grace do very specific answers to prayer. And so as I surrender to each step, I see God bless that step and I go on to the next step.
Yep.
That makes sense?
Absolutely.
So sometimes when I tell people that, they look at me sideways because sometimes in the IFB movement, we really emphasize the call.
Yeah.
But I never had one. I simply surrendered to whatever God would have me to do.
Yeah, well, I interviewed Dr. Kurtman. He's been in ministry for 50 years, and I asked him the same question. And his answer to the confirmation part of the question was fruit was the confirmation.
Yeah, fruit, same thing.
Just seeing fruit and knowing that, yeah, the Lord's in this. It's not just me out here by myself.
100%.
Something else, I've heard pastors explain before, moments in their ministry where they might have been in an apologetic crisis or a moment of serious doubt. We had a pastor on, one of the pastor of the largest church in Pensacola, like 5,000 people. He sat here and said that there was a moment, I think it was in 1999, where he was just going through it in the ministry and he wanted to quit. He said, these people don't deserve me. I want to get out of here. Have there been moments like similar to that for you in your ministry where it felt like, I need to get out of here? Or have you ever had those feelings like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of them I remember very specifically. I was headed to a men's meeting and no men in my church wanted to go with me. So I went by myself and I got to the place early and I was pretty discouraged. And I opened my Bible and I just happened to land on John chapter 6 and I began to read. And at the end of John chapter 6, you have the majority of the disciples, the larger group of disciples, abandon Jesus over some hard things that he said. And he looks at Peter and the boys and he said, are you going to go too? And Peter said, where would we go? You have the words of life. You have it. And God used that in that moment in my life that even in times of discourage, what am I going to do? Go sell insurance? No. God has the words of life. He is the living God. He is the sovereign creator of the universe. He has called me. I surrender to him, and I go by his guidance. And even if there's been temporary times of fruitlessness, overall there's been incredible fruit. There's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
He has the words of life.
Yeah.
Can't give up.
Praise the Lord. That's a great answer. Here's another thing I heard you talk about recently in your past sermon. I think you were in Ephesians 3, and you were talking about the church. And this was kind of an aside, but you said this statement in your most recent sermon. You said you cannot have a high view of Christ and a low view of the church at the same time. That's what you said last Sunday. And so I think that touches on a really big trend, unfortunately, in Christian culture towards individualism, where people say, I've got the Holy Spirit. I don't need the institution of the church. And so I want to talk to you about the importance of the local church in the believer's life.
In a few passages before that, a verse before that, in chapter 3, and I think it's verse 18, Paul in his prayer for the church is talking about what he wants the believer to experience. And he wants the believer to be filled and to know the inner man to be refreshed. And he wants us to be able to comprehend how wide and deep and big and wonderful God's love is. Yeah. And in the middle of that, he makes a statement that's easy to miss. He says, with all saints. And in that, he's showing that you and I can only fully understand the incredible depth, width, height of God's love with other believers, with all saints.
That's good.
It's impossible to do it as a Lone Ranger Christian.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is this. When you and I are in a church setting, we're rubbing shoulders with sinners just like us. And so there's going to be a constant ebb and flow of offense. And then if we're following the Bible, biblical reconciliation and the giving of grace.
Yeah.
And then offense, reconciliation, grace. Offense, reconciliation, grace. And it just keeps going. And you know, just from being around believers, how easy it is to get offended, but then you fix it and you work it out.
Sure.
And as we continue to have to give grace and have to work things out and have to rely upon that, we begin just to get a glimpse of the grace that God gives us. How often do we mess up? A billion times.
Right.
How often do we come back to the Lord asking for forgiveness? And so when we have to then exercise that same grace to others, now I'm beginning to understand God's grace toward me.
Yeah.
And so only within the community of believers can I fully comprehend God's love, and God rigged it that way.
Yes.
So I fully believe that those that separate themselves from God's church will always be stunted spiritually, because God rigged sanctification to happen only within the confines of the local church.
That's such a good answer. I've seen that trend among like influencer Christians who hop on Instagram Reels and they talk about how they've got their Holy Spirit and they're the temple now, and they don't need some institution to tell them how they ought to live because they have the Bible and they have their Holy Spirit. And I am sitting there listening to this, and it's just nails on a chalkboard to me, because in my own life, I'm only 20, but I've been able to see the ways that the church has so benefited me throughout my life already. And it's like, how could somebody, read the same Bible I read and not see the importance of the church in it, number one, and then go to church and not feel the benefits of a healthy Bible-believing church? It's
super popular now to look at all the ways the church has failed people.
Right.
People write books on it, and do podcasts and stories, and I want to have compassion, but really get in line with everybody else.
Yes.
The worst betrayal that I've ever experienced has been at the hands of Christians. Okay, yeah, so did Jesus happen, right? With Peter and the guys as they took off running.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the most generous, loving, sacrificial, kind people have also been Christians.
Right.
Right? It goes the other way too.
Yes.
And so we've all been hurt. We've all had times of deep wounding. So we go to the Lord to it.
Yes.
We don't abandon his bride.
You're totally right. Those are great answers. It's an unbecoming trend where young people are just throwing away the church and just saying, since this one pastor did this one bad thing, then I can't trust the entire church. It's like, what? Wait, what a second. We're sinners, people mess up, and that doesn't deny the legitimacy of our faith or of the importance of the church at all. So
no. And there may be unhealthy trends in certain church circles, and we have to call a spade and recognize things that could be wrong. But again, you don't throw the entire thing.
Yeah, you're totally right. Here's another question for you. One of the pitfalls, you could say, of a young preacher, and I've seen this in my own life and I've seen it in other people, is a lack of originality. And so as a young preacher, in college, I have to write sermons. I get to teach in the youth group occasionally, sometimes on Sunday nights, rarely, and I'll get to preach. And one of the tendencies as a young guy is to hear a sermon that you really liked and then change a thing here or there and then call it your own, you know? And so that's a challenge, especially like me coming into ministry. It's like, I need to be original. I need to study the word myself and see what the Holy Spirit impresses on me, and so that I can deliver that to the people that God's entrusted me to preach to. How have you tried to create originality in your own preaching?
So this is an old problem.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the old preacher R.G. Lee and his famous sermon, Payday Someday?
Oh, I've heard that sermon. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a story where him and his wife were on vacation. They slip into the back of a little Baptist church somewhere in the country on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And the pastor stands up, a young guy, and has memorized word for word Payday Someday.
No
Now, this is back in the
way.
day of tapes, right?
That's hilarious.
And so he just is sitting there seething that this guy had stolen and preaches everything that he has. So to answer your question, and this will also go to the AA idea, we'll get to it in a minute.
Yeah.
It comes down to personal integrity, right? That ministry is hard work, and it comes down to character and the idea that we're not going to plagiarize.
Yeah.
You know, when I went to Bible school, my pastor said, "Don't reinvent the wheel." So there's some wisdom in that.
Mhm.
You know, we don't have to do everything from scratch. We can build upon the men that have gone before us. But as far as trying to, you know, emulate or be a carbon copy of something that you like, it's disingenuous.
Mm.
And most people can tell when you preach a sermon whether you're simply rehearsing something you've already heard, or
Mhm.
whether it's something that God has given you through prayer and study.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back to what you asked me, I asked my wife about this morning, and I don't know that I ever really had a problem with trying to copy others. Like, obviously, Pastor Monty influenced me quite a bit, and
Mhm.
others would influence. But as far as trying to copy their style, I may have tried once or twice, and then it fell so flat, I just gave up and said,
Sure.
I just got to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way to be. So on that same topic, let's talk sermon process. How long during the week does it take you? How many hours does it take you to come up with Sunday morning message? Do you teach Sunday school at your church or no?
Not anymore.
Okay. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, however many times you preach, like, what's the sermon process look like for each one of those sermons?
All right, here's a silly answer, but there's some truth to it. Now it's 25 years.
Yeah.
And so you've been doing it for a while,
Yeah.
that you end up getting a base of knowledge where things don't always have to take as long as they used to.
Yes.
Now, here at Golden Harvest, I only preach twice a week because we
Okay.
don't have a Sunday night service.
Okay.
So I do Wednesday and Sunday morning.
Mhm.
At Bethel, where I served for 18 years, I did 4 times a week. But now you have a base, and so there are things that since I preach expository messages, I've now preached through half the books of the Bible, and so you have a good basis there. But generally speaking, probably 10 to 15 hours on a Sunday morning,
Mhm.
probably 8 on a Wednesday.
Okay.
That I do a lot of background reading, fair amount of study. It's not always that long, but if I'm going from scratch for something I'm unfamiliar with,
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay. And there's been times in your ministry where you have preached like Sunday school, Sunday morning.
Oh yeah, for 18 years, I did
Yeah.
four services a week.
Wow. How has 2 services been different than 4, and how has the study played into that? Has it been more helpful to focus on 2 sermons only?
All right, so here I'm going to give you a hot take.
Okay.
That
We're all about hot take
You're
on
all-
the Strength for Life podcast.
all right, and so this is only my opinion.
Okay.
So we don't have a Sunday night service at our church.
Yeah.
And I love it. And we have started small groups instead.
Okay.
And so for churches that have a Sunday night service, it is my opinion that it has to be something better than Sunday morning light. I know a lot of preachers, and the amount of preachers I know that put so much time into Sunday morning, and then Sunday night they're winging it because they just ran out of time,
Mm.
does a disservice for the people. If we get frustrated that they don't come out to Sunday night service, but we're giving them something that we've just cooked up or fluff or whatever because we don't have time for it, then what are we doing here, right?
Mhm.
And so if we're not going to do it well, I don't think we should be doing it.
Sure.
And churches don't understand the amount of time it takes to prepare a proper biblical message. And for many churches, like I did for 18 years, do 4 a week,
Yeah.
then they wonder why you don't have time to do everything else,
Sure.
because it's impossible.
Yeah.
What was your question? I forgot.
Oh, no, it's fine. What do small groups look like for you guys? Do you have small groups Sunday night that meet in different places or at the church?
So we have one Sunday night for those that really miss Sunday night service.
Yeah.
And so it's throughout the week in different times, locations, and people's homes.
Okay.
And so it's based off the Sunday morning sermon. So it's not a separate curriculum. We're not studying Jonah. And I do a series of questions to help us apply and think about what happened Sunday morning. And then I have leaders that do this. And it's been really good for our church. And my eventual goal is to have an 80% participation rate.
Yeah.
Right now we're at 50%, and we add a new class every semester, a new location.
Yeah. I just heard of a church recently, one of my friends goes to, who started doing small groups instead of their midweek service. And so they have small groups like on Wednesday or Thursday night, and they'll, section people off together, try to have 10 or 20 people. This church is huge. Like they've got a couple thousand people, but small groups have been a huge success from that church that I've heard. So I've heard positive things from that idea.
We look at the early church. When the early church met, they met in Solomon's porch, big groups, and in people's homes, small groups. So from the very beginning, they had things split up. One of the things we had to remember when we look at different ways of doing things is ask ourselves the question, is it biblically right, biblically wrong, with verses attached to it, or is it just different?
Sure.
And it's okay to do things different sometimes.
Yeah.
And we have to learn that we can still be friends with each other if we do things differently.
Right. Very true. As far as your message topics, is it all expositional? I know on Sunday mornings you're going through Ephesians right now. I listened to a few of those in preparation for this. And then Wednesday nights, what are you doing Wednesday nights? Is it expositional as well?
Minor prophets.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. As far as knowing where to go next, is it a systematic, Ephesians, we're going to keep going through those epistles, or is it stuff like, you just kind of hop around to the next book or whatever? And do you preach topical messages as well? Do you ever sprinkle in just for fun on a Sunday morning that you feel current events are pushing you to preach this, or is it all exposition all the time?
So it's majority expositional, occasionally topical.
Okay.
Like just a couple weeks ago, I did a topical message on baptism because we had 10 baptisms all at once. And so taught on what biblical baptism is. As far as what book to do next, I pray about what I think our church could use at the moment. So the reason I did Ephesians, so I did Acts because I was a new pastor and I wanted to have our church figure out what the early church is together. Then I did Ephesians because we have many new believers in our church, or people that have been saved for a while but have not grown at all because of the churches they were in. And so I chose Ephesians because I think there's a number of topics in Ephesians that can help the new believer.
Yeah.
I'm praying about doing the Gospel of Mark next. And so the book we would choose, I'm kind of judge the needs of our congregation as I see it, and then what book could help us address those needs at the moment.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Very neat. I think that's wise to do. Let's talk about your week. We talked about sermon process and the kind of the time that takes up in your week. How much time do you spend pastoring people during the week? I know of some pastors like Pastor MacArthur, John MacArthur, when he was alive, he said he spent 40, 50 hours a week just studying and trying to figure out what his next message was. And recently, Pastor Monty said to me that he is delegating more and just spending more time studying, more time working on sermons and stuff. So what time during your week are you pastoring people, counseling, hospital visits, stuff like that, as opposed to studying?
It's probably 50-50.
Okay.
And so I heard an old pastor say that, generally speaking, your mornings belong to God, your afternoons belong to the church, and your evenings belong to your family.
Okay.
And so that could be a general way to divide it up. And so I do most mornings in the office study or counseling.
Yeah.
Afternoons usually visiting, and evenings is a combination of visiting or family stuff.
Yeah.
So it's probably a half and half.
Okay.
Now I'm the only staff member at church at this time. We actually have a vote coming up for an assistant pastor, but there's a lot of people stuff.
Yeah, sure. That makes total sense. As far as illustration go, how do you come up with like healthy illustrations, fresh illustrations, that you're not just recycling, old stories. I heard just recently you preached a sermon and you had this story of some black preacher, and he went on and on about how Jesus is king.
That's my king.
Yeah, that's my king.
Dr.
Yeah.
Lockridge.
Yeah, that was great. It's a really neat story that tied into exactly what the text was talking about. And it was fun, to listen to. So how do you come up with stories like that, illustrations, stuff like that in your sermons?
So the short answer is that I don't. I don't use a lot of illustrations.
Okay.
Most of the ones I do are personal.
Sure.
When I first started, I tried really hard to find stories on, from history or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think part of that was me compensating because I had nothing else to say. And just because you're just starting out and you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, if something fits or if I hear about something, I'll throw it in, but I spend very little effort looking for the perfect illustration.
Yeah.
Because I've been convinced that the text is sufficient.
Yes.
Now, obviously, illustrations and stories, Jesus used stories, can help bring a window into it. But we just got to open the book and let it cook, right? We don't need to complicate things.
That'll preach, dude.
We don't need to be clever. Wow. And so I use personal illustrations or Bible illustrations, but I don't try too hard to get clever with some story.
Yeah.
Because the Bible is sufficient.
Can we put that on a t-shirt?
Yes.
Open the book.
I say that in my church often.
Well, we need to
open the book and let her cook.
That's great, dude. That's great. Oh, write that in your Bible, man. Oh, that's good. That'll preach. Okay, so speaking of illustrations, recently I got to teach in the Gap Sunday School class, which is the young adult class, and I get to fill in for Brother Lieb when he's on military duty. And I was preaching through Isaiah 36 and 37. And we were talking about Hezekiah, and we are talking about the voice of the enemy and how they were coming in and speaking lies to God's people. And Hezekiah was like, don't listen to them. Mm-hmm. They're lying to you. So in preparation for that, I was thinking, I need some sort of get your attention at the beginning, some illustration, some story, some historical, thing that connects the biblical passage and introduces what I'm saying. So I go to ChatGPT, and this was just a few weeks ago, and before Sunday school, and I'm like, give me a historical illustration of when someone in opposition, lied to a group of people to try to coerce them into believing something. And it gave me a story from World War II where the Nazis would go on the radio into London and speak lies to the people of London. And it was an interesting illustration. So I told this story, in preparation, like at the beginning of the Sunday school lesson, leading into chapters 36 and 37 to lead into that stuff. So that leads to my next question about AI. What role has AI played for you in your ministry? Have you used it, like with your ministry in your sermon preparation to find resources like that, or how have you used it personally?
So I think what you did is brilliant. So I look at AI like this. AI can be used to locate, but not create.
Yes, that's good. Right?
And so I use it personally often in place of Googling now. I don't ever Google anything. I use the Perplexity app, which Pastor Monty recommended to me.
Yeah.
And I use it in place of Googling. So I use it often for that.
Yeah.
As far as in ministry, I do use it. I can do that, find 10 illustrations of this, and we'll pick one of my favorites. Or what I use a lot is that going to public high school in Canada, my grammar is insufficient. I know Pastor Monty is a big grammar guy.
Oh, yeah.
I would not be able to identify split infinitive to save my life.
Nor would I.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Never seen one in the wild. And so what I use ChatGPT to quite often is to diagram my sentences.
Oh, interesting.
I'll put the text in there and get my main verbs identified, my participles identified, and use that to help me break down the passage. So I use it quite a bit for things like that, which I just don't know how to do.
Yeah. So
again, you can help locate, but you can't create. Right?
Yeah.
You're not going to make it write things for you.
That's really helpful.
That's unethical.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when my intern, I had him preach on a Sunday morning, and he was having trouble with getting outline for the text. So I gave him that suggestion: throw it in ChatGPT, find what your main verbs are, help it, and when you can diagram it, and I'm sure you've seen how a sentence diagrammed. It lays it out where it makes the structure really simple to know what the emphasis ought to be. Mm-hmm. So I use it in areas like that.
Yeah, totally true. So I was talking to somebody about AI recently, and one of the things he said was that he is worried for the next generation of young people that are coming up with having AI constantly. Like, why would they need to memorize anything? Why would they need to retain a lot of information when it's right at their fingertips that they can just ask their AI buddy on their phone whenever they want. Do you think that that is a thing that we should be, aware of and caution of young people, like not memorizing stuff just because they have the internet and have AI right next to them?
So let's segue into something. So I think you brought on something that's going to be very important in the future. Every Wednesday, I do what's called Prophecy Watch.
Mhm.
So I look at current event headlines and how it could
Mhm.
fit into what the Bible teaches on what's coming down the road.
Sure.
And so we have talked quite a bit about the role of AI and the possibility about it being involved in the image of the beast. We have this statue thing that is now demanding people worship it. And, for a long time we thought, well, how does this image move and speak? Is it magic? And now you could see the possibility of AI doing it. So then we wonder, well, surely this world can't be that dumb that they're going to let AI tell what to do.
No.
And what you just said is
Sure.
becoming an alarming trend
Yeah.
of young people. So there was an article that came out last week or 2 weeks ago about how young people, they are more comfortable talking to an AI companion than they are an adult. It's become more than just helping them with their homework.
Yeah.
They speak to AI when they're sad and depressed and lonely. They're using it as a person alternative.
Yeah.
We've already seen AI Jesus. We've already seen hologram Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
We saw Jim Acosta, the old CNN correspondent for the
Sure.
White House, do
I saw that.
a avatar AI interview.
That kid was dead.
That kid was dead.
Yeah.
And so now we have people that have lost loved ones having AI in its place, which is dangerously close to calling upon the spirits.
Yeah.
So if we get a generation that is used to conversing with AI and having them as their BFF, it's not a big leap to think on how the image of the beast could then
Yeah.
command them to do things.
Cue the spooky music.
Yeah. So
Like-
I think it's incredibly important that parents and grandparents know what their kids are doing with AI
Wow.
and that there's real conversations happening that AI is not replaced. Because we have kids, when I was a kid, when people just shut up themselves in the rooms, you're playing Duck Hunt on the Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
But now the kids are in the rooms, they never come out because they have
Why would they?
replaced
Yeah.
human interaction with AI. It's very dangerous, and I can absolutely see how that runs into end times prophecy.
Wow. Gronk is the Antichrist.
Oy.
You heard it here first, folks.
Well, remember last time we talked about the emblem with the broken cross?
Yeah, we did. Yes, I remember. Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, segue topics almost completely 180 here. Just a few more topics. And I haven't asked anybody this, and I'd wanted to. So since you're one of the last ones, I guess you have to answer it. But what do you view the role of the modern evangelist as today? And how have your experience with evangelists been over the years?
Mixed.
Okay.
I became a senior pastor at 24. The very first evangelist I had was already booked, and he sent me a very thick packet a few weeks out, which had a number of unreasonable demands that we just couldn't do. Everything from what was to be in his hotel room to a gassed up vehicle to meals. Like, it was really detailed.
Really?
And I remember looking at it just in shock. And I went to my deacons and I said, I don't know how we can do this.
Was it Billy Graham?
It was not Billy Graham, but
Like,
you would have thought.
yeah,
You would have
seriously.
thought. Like, it was really demanding.
Yeah.
And so we actually canceled him like 3 weeks before he was supposed to show up.
Good for you.
And
Oh, no.
and then I've had other evangelists, like one of our favorites who's been very gracious is Morris Gleiser.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so I've had mixed. Probably like I don't know if this is true, but we have gone away from traditional revival services to more themed stuff. And so I'll have someone come in for a family conference or a Bible conference or a prophecy conference or something along a theme rather than a traditional
Yeah.
revival.
Sure.
There's always exceptions and everyone is different, but I have my own anecdotal experience is that many evangelists do preach the same 5 messages. And you go to, I've been to several revival meetings where I'm like, oh man, I've heard that at my church, and I've heard that at this camp, I've heard that at that camp. And
Yes.
it doesn't seem tailored to the needs of the congregation. It is what they have in the bucket.
Sure.
I'm sure there's exceptions about that,
Right.
but that's been my experience.
Well, I've heard similar things, and that's why I wanted to ask it. I've heard similar things, like a pastor saying to me one time that he really tries not to schedule evangelists, and he just tries to schedule pastors to come preach at his church, because pastors understand the things that other pastors are going through. And when you're evangelist, he kind of voiced like, they don't necessarily understand. They're not sitting with people each week and counseling these people. They just kind of come in and mooch, is kind of how he described it. Unfortunately, not everybody, but his experiences were kind of like yours, where a lot of them early on were negative, and then he was like, he kind of got a bad taste in his mouth for those people.
You have some guys that are very gracious, and they see their job is to encourage the pastor and to bless the church. I see Scott Pauley is one of those guys.
Yes.
Morris Gleiser is one of those guys.
Yeah.
I've had good experiences with Jim Van Gelderen back in the day, but that hasn't been all my experience.
Yes.
So a lot of it comes down to that personality as well. And pastors are the same way. Are we here to serve or be served? Right?
Right.
So I think that same entitlement can transcend against offices.
Yeah. What would you say, as a pastor, what would you say are ways that the evangelist, or any guest speaker really, can come in and try to minister to the pastor? What are ways that he can do that?
Well, ask questions. Don't come in presupposing what your job is or what you're going to do.
Yeah.
If you're coming in as a guest, that place you're speaking at has its own unique needs and challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So ask questions. What's happening here? What's going on? What are the people like? New believers, old believers, any challenges going on? And then you can help tailor things. If you haven't been given a specific topic, then you can help tailor things to those needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so being humble enough to go in and ask questions rather than saying, this is what we're going to give.
Yep. Yeah. Super good. Last question for you. If you could go back to 20-year-old Pastor Ryan King, then not Pastor King, but just 20-year-old Ryan King. I'm 20. I'm going into my junior year of college. If you could go back and talk to him, what would he need to hear about, now that you have, seasoned years in ministry? What would young Ryan King, need to hear?
To see everything through God's sovereignty. So ministry is hard, right? It's a mix of the good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And so to go in to every difficult situation, knowing that God will redeem this for His glory, and that you can feel all the feels, and you can have your good cry if you need to, or however you deal with that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But to know that every difficult situation God will redeem for His glory, and then in that, to pay very close attention. The psalmist calls out, Lord, show me a token for good. And so God is so gracious in all the little ways, big ways too. God can drop in giant blessings, but God is so gracious in all the little things. And so to be very deliberate in every little bit of kindness God shows you, and every little blessing that you have, every little old lady that brings you, a cookie, or people that give you the $20 handshake when you're going on vacation, or whatever, all those little things is God's using His people to show His kindness.
Yeah.
And so I would just remind myself, you're going to have hard times. You're going to have times where people could be nasty and betrayal and question everything. But make sure that you see that through the eyes of God's sovereignty, that God is using that to redeem things and to sharpen me and to mold me into Christ-likeness.
Right.
And to see every little blessing is what it is. It's God's small kindness and graciousness in all the little ways.
Yeah. I've asked everybody that so far, and that's a unique answer. I think that's really good. What
other kind of answers have you gotten?
Stay humble, listen, and answers of, it doesn't matter what I'd say, he'd never listen to me anyway. One answer I got was, he said I would tell him to buy Matthew Henry's commentary. That was legitimately his answer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said I'd give years off my life now if I would have, read and studied and applied his commentary through my preaching. So unique answers, but that's a helpful one.
Yeah. Because everyone's path is a little bit different, right? And so we all tend to learn a little bit differently, and different things stick. Yeah. And ministry is such a big roller coaster of emotional highs and lows, right? And we're warned not to get too high or to get too low, but to stay steady and just recognize, when I go through things now, I really try to see, how is God's goodness shown in this? Even in times of tremendous pain, God's always good, always gracious, always sovereign. How is His goodness being shown?
Yeah. That's a great answer. Pastor King, thanks for your time.
I'm thrilled to be on a three-peat now.
You are on a tear right now. Can't wait for you to come back. You'll be on soon.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor Kaiser, for doing the cameras. Shout out to Pastor Kaiser. And thank you for
Appreciate that, sir.
Yeah. We recognize what Psalm 46:1 says, that God is our refuge and strength, and that he is a very present help in trouble. And so if I can help you, I'd love to do that. My email is andrew@northstonebaptist.org. And thank you again for listening.